The following video is based on Chapter 3, Section C, and Chapter 5, Section A of the 2018 book, The Quantum Hermetica, by Olivia and Ethan Palmer. The subject matter is controversial, and does not necessarily represent the views of this channel. Rather, the material is merely laid out, and the viewer is encouraged to come to his or her own conclusions on the subject. The book, The Quantum Hermetica, can be purchased on Amazon through the link in the description. In a prior video, we explored the parallels listed between the wave function in quantum mechanics and the concept of vibration in Hermeticism is examined in the 2018 book, The Quantum Hermetica. But as it turns out, this is not the only purported parallel between esotericism and advanced physics. According to the Quantum Hermetica authors, when we piece together elements from another esoteric system, we start to see a rather astonishing pattern emerging, much like the picture on a giant jigsaw puzzle beginning to appear, whose different sections have been scattered and hidden across history. The patterns appearing in this jigsaw puzzle begin to emerge when Hermeticism is pieced together with Kabbalah from esoteric Judaism. According to the authors of the Quantum Hermetica, the resulting pattern displays impossible parallels with advanced physics only discovered in the 20th and 21st centuries. To examine these parallels, it is necessary to first explore how Cabala describes the construction of reality. In the Cabala, the physical world of our senses is not fundamental, but is a kind of illusion that conceals a veiled reality. According to Cabala, this veiled reality constitutes worlds of emanation that produce the appearance of the physical world on our side of the veil. Within these higher emanating worlds, the real reality producing the appearance of the physical world is, according to Cabala, the words of creation, which are coded in Hebrew letters. These words of creation are said to be continuously spoken by God. If God were to stop speaking these words of creation even for a moment, the world would disappear as though it had never been. Curiously, this neatly parallels what we know from modern physics. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Bernard Spanier even explicitly referred to the quantum world behind our appearances as a, quote, veiled reality. Meanwhile, emergent space-time research tells us that the physical space-time world we see emerges from a quantum probability space or Hilbert space that constitutes a deeper layer of reality. And what does physics tell us the world is constructed from in this deeper layer of reality? Well, it says that space-time and matter emerge from code. Only this time the code is not Hebrew letters as in Kabbalah, but quantum information. Nevertheless, the similarity between these two is uncanny.
There are atoms making up the molecules. There are subatomic particles, electrons and quarks, making up the atoms themselves. But we are catching a glimpse that maybe underneath the molecules and atoms and particles, there's another layer of reality that's coming to light. It's a layer that's based on information. Maybe, as a physical system moves, for instance, the fact that the object was here and now is over here can be realized in this information theoretic sense by the zeros and ones trailing behind it changing, by virtue of that object having once been there and now having moved on. Maybe we should describe reality in terms of how that information, the zeros and ones that make up the boy or the boat, how those zeros and ones evolve over time. Maybe that's what physics is really about. If this idea is correct, it would mean that going forward, we should change the language that we've used to formulate physics. Instead of particles and the laws that govern how they behave, it should be bits and bytes and algorithms describing how they change over time.
However, it becomes more uncanny when we try to parse out the exact technical details of quantum information. Unlike regular information, quantum information is information which holds multiple states in superposition at the same time. The unit of quantum information is a quantum bit or qubit, which, unlike a regular bit, can be simultaneously a 1 and a 0 at the same time, rather than either a 1 or a 0. If we want to get even more technical, we find that these superposed states can be described in a Hilbert space representation of the state space of a qubit, known as a Bloch Sphere, named after the Swiss-American physicist Felix Bloch. In turn, the Bloch Sphere has specific recognizable properties that neatly describe the precise behavior of qubits. On a Bloch sphere, the states are arranged on the surface of a sphere in pairs, with an axis for each pair of states. Pure states, meaning single states, are on the surface of the sphere, whereas mixed states, or permutated combinations of the pure states, are located within the sphere. In turn, each such permutation corresponds to a different superposition of states, which would process a different probable outcome within the quantum state. When one wants to perform an operation on the qubit, this is done by rotating the Bloch sphere, with different rotations corresponding to different outcomes. The behavior of a Bloch sphere is an elementary concept in quantum computer science, and describes the behavior of quantum information in quantum computation. However, the Quantum Hermetica notes something very highly peculiar about these details. This peculiarity arises when we switch over to the Kabbalistic understanding of the Hebrew letters, said to be generating reality. Here, the Quantum Hermetica highlights a very conspicuous and impossibly uncanny passage in the Sefer Yetzirah, or Book of Creation, the oldest known Kabbalist text in the world, which describes in detail the function of the Hebrew letters said to construct reality. These 22 letters, the foundations, he arranged as on a sphere, with 231 modes of entrance. If the sphere be rotated forward, good is implied. If in a retrograde manner, evil is intended. For he indeed showed the mode of combination of the letters, each with each, Aleph with all, and all with Aleph. Thus, in combining all together in pairs, are produced these 231 gates of knowledge. Here, just as with the pure states on the surface of the Bloch sphere, the single Hebrew letters are arranged on the surface of a sphere. Meanwhile, the 231 permutations of these states correspond to modes of entrance to within the sphere, which is ironically also precisely where the superposed states in a qubit are stored, within a Bloch sphere. Likewise, operations are done in the qubit through rotations on the Bloch sphere along its axes, with different rotations corresponding to different outcomes. But then when one wants different outcomes from the sphere described in the Sefer Yetzirah, curiously, this is also done by rotating the sphere. In other words, as the Quantum Hermetica points out, it appears that the Sefer Yetzirah is giving the precise description of the Bloch sphere representation of a qubit, when it describes the behavior of the Hebrew letters it claims constructs reality. As uncanny as this is, things become even stranger when this Kabbalistic understanding is integrated into the framework of Hermeticism, the other Western esoteric tradition. Despite being different traditions, Hermeticism and Kabbalah are thought to be mutually compatible systems. In fact, the two fit together so well that they can be synthesized into a single system called Hermetic Kabbalah. Hermeticism primarily focuses on the manner in which the physical world emanates or emerges from a deeper reality, whereas Kabbalah primarily focuses on the structure within this deeper emanating reality. Thus, the relationship between the two could be described as roughly akin to the relationship between software and hardware. The hardware describes the relationship between the computer game world on the monitor and the hard drive generating that virtual environment. The software, meanwhile, determines what emanates or manifests from the hard drive onto the screen. Hermetic Kabbalah, therefore, could be thought of as akin to a unified picture of the computer's hardware and software. Both describe a deeper layer of reality from which the world emanates. Hermeticism describes this emanating realm as a collective inner mental space, something akin to Jung's collective unconscious, and relates this to other Hermetic principles. If one then equates this with the emanating world of Kabbalah, something even more fascinating emerges about the apparent Bloch sphere description of a quantum bit found in the Sefer Yetzirah. In quantum mechanics, qubits, like all other superposed states, are encoded in wave functions, what physicist Michio Kaku refers to as waves of vibration.
Then in 1925, along came quantum mechanics, which says that these dots of matter, the electron, the proton, are not really dots at all. In some sense, they're waves of vibration.
Oddly enough, Hermeticism also speaks of vibrations. In both cases, everything is said to possess these vibrations. According to Hermeticism, everything vibrates, and in quantum mechanics, everything is described a wave function or wave of vibration. Further, Hermeticism relates these vibrations to the collective inner mental space of Hermeticism by ascribing mentality to them. What is peculiar about this is that multiple recent finds in cognitive science do the same thing. On the theoretical side, both integrated information theory and conscious realism, the theory proposed by Donald Hoffman, explicitly identify consciousness with quantum entanglement, defined in physics as two or more particles sharing the same wave function.
And the question then is, how should we write the state of the red and green line together? What's the joint state of the red line and the green line on the cube that you're experiencing? Well, intuitively, you can see that whenever the red line is in front, the green line is behind, right? And whenever the green is in front, the red is behind. And that's because they're part of a whole, namely the whole cube. And because of that, they're entangled, and the right description for the state of the red line and the green line is the exact same equation that is the standard equation for entanglement. So this is, the top was the conscious agent dynamics long-term behavior, and then if you write down the wave equation for the free particle in quantum mechanics, it's exactly the same equation.
Meanwhile, quantum cognition shows that human indecision and fuzzy logic are exactly described by the Schrödinger equation, the same equation that describes the behavior of these wave functions. On the experimental side, recent experiments with MRI scans of the brain conducted at Trinity University in Dublin, Ireland, show that the EEG readings corresponding to our consciousness are entangled with proton spin in our brain water. As the study notes, though, this is only possible if our consciousness exists in a state of entanglement with the brain water's proton spin. Meanwhile, according to other research conducted in Shanghai University in China, it appears that the simultaneous firing of neurons across the brain may be correlated with quantum entanglement. What is more is that Hermeticism appears to ascribe its vibrations with the exact same sort of non-local properties described in entanglement, as noted in Chapter 5 of the Quantum Hermetica. Here it cites the Kabbalian's description of shared vibrations as mediating telepathy, and one need not believe in parapsychological phenomenon to see the relevance of this. Whether or not it is real, one can consider what is being described as a hypothetical. If something like telepathy were real, it could not be mediated by classical vibrations, as these diminish too quickly, and in the case of the brain, classical brain waves are too weak to transmit anyway. Rather, only the non-local nature of wave functions in a state of quantum entanglement could possibly fit what is being described here. In other words, the only way to describe the vibrations in Hermeticism as something real would be to identify them with the wave function in quantum mechanics. If one then interpolates the description of the sphere in the Sefer Yetzirah back into Hermeticism, one gets the complete picture. A sphere encoding a set of permutated states, exactly resembling a Bloch Sphere representation of a quantum bit, is encoded into Hermeticism's vibrations, which in turn are described exactly like the wave function, storing such quantum bits in quantum mechanics. What is more is that space-time is said to emerge from such entangled information, exactly like how the physical world is said to emerge from the Hebrew letters arranged suspiciously like qubits in the Sefer Yetzirah. Thus, the Quantum Hermetica appears to document a precise and unmistakable techno-signature that is somehow embedded within these ancient occult systems, that exactly matches modern quantum information science. How such a techno-signature could have ended up there is extraordinary, but a complete mystery. So what did the Palmers, the book's authors, get for such a remarkable discovery? Believe it or not, an anonymous death threat. Despite not being able to track the source of the death threat, its deliverer left behind an important clue. The threat was delivered to a friend of the authors, whose phone logs were then remotely erased. However, it is only possible to remotely erase phone logs using Pegasus spyware, the most sophisticated hacking spyware in the world. It is important to note, however, that Pegasus spyware is strictly unavailable and indeed illegal for civilian usage. Such programs are only available to members of government black programs, identifying the source of the threat as coming from within a government intelligence agency. So why would a government intelligence agency want to cover up such a remarkable discovery as a techno-signature showing up in ancient occult systems? The reasons are unclear, but they appear to fit a curious pattern. Recently, affiliates of the World Economic Forum, what many believe to be a front organization for a global deep state, were caught attempting to halt and suppress excavation on extremely ancient but advanced archaeological sites dating back to the last ice age, such as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey and Gunung Padang in Indonesia. Why a deep state front group associated with the globalist agenda would want to suppress such important discoveries is unclear. However, it shares a common denominator with the government death threat the Palmers received over their own discovery. It appears that there is something of huge significance about our ancient past that is deliberately being suppressed by a hidden hand. What that is and why anyone would want to conceal it remains a mystery to be explored in a future video. If you like this video, subscribe and support me on Patreon. And don't forget to check out the books in my Alaris novel series, Alaris, The Lances of Light, and Alaris, The Pearl of Heaven, on Amazon Kindle in the description below. You can find us on Facebook as well, at Idealism and Science versus Atheism.